Hey everybody, my name is Zach REDRUP. You're listening to the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode I'm joined by vocalist Brandon Saller and guitarist Dan Jacobs of Atreyu. We talk about the band's multiple EP releases throughout 2023, building up to their new album, The Beautiful Dark of Life, the concept weaving throughout those releases, working with John Feldmann as their producer, looking back at their 25-year-long career, and loads more. Now, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast and you want to show your support, there's a few ways that you can do that. Number one, leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. It takes just a few seconds and it really does help. Number two, share this on your social media, whether that be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Or number three, if you want to go the extra mile, you can pay a little bit each month to join the Patreon, and in return you'll get access to episodes early along with some other perks, or you can pick up some merch from the store. All the links to that and the podcast socials where you can follow us can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now with all that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. What's up everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by Brandon and Dan from the band Atreyu. How are you both doing?
Great. How are you?
All good, all good. I was actually thinking before, Atreyu were quite a good formative part of me, getting into heavier music. The first festival I went to, you guys played at, was Give It a Name in 2006. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was also the first time I went to a circle pit. I think you had a circle pit going for maybe Bleeding Mascara, and I was terrified. I was staying behind this huge jock guy, just trying to make sure I get to the end.
That was a very big circle pit.
I mean, I don't know if I'm not remembering correctly because it was so long ago, but it's one of the biggest circle pits I've seen.
Yeah, that was an epic. There was a lot of excitement around that time in music too. I think it was just an epic time for everything going on then.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think obviously you guys were climbing up the ranks then. You had My Chemical Romance, I think, headlined that day as well. So
Panic at the Disco.
They were there.
They got booked when they got booked, they had not yet popped. And then, so they played pretty early in the day, but had one of the gnarliest shows of the whole show because
they played right before us.
Right before us. And then also same Paramore. Paramore was on a side stage.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think they came on pretty early, along with Billy Talent as well. I think they came on around the same time too.
For sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Good time for music.
Yeah. But let's talk about current day Atreyu. You've released 3 EPs this year. The Hope of a Spark in April. Then you had The Moment You Find Your Flame in August. And then the third one, A Torch in the Dark. And then obviously there'll be a further collection of songs along with those ones, which would form your 9th album, The Beautiful Dark of Life. How did the idea of, releasing them, all those songs in blocks of EPs come about? Why did you decide to go down that route of releasing new music?
I think this day and age, you kind of, one, I think people's attention spans are shot. So it's kind of you put all this blood, sweat, and tears into an album, and you have, maybe 4 or 5 songs that actually see the light of day. And because of sheer placement on a record, a lot of songs just kind of go by the wayside. And it's there's songs that you believe are oh, that song's great, but people just didn't have the attention span to even listen that far. And most people aren't starting on song 6 when they put on a record,
Yeah.
So it's the thought of kind of breaking it up into pieces just seemed more along the lines of how people are digesting music these days. And then with this kind of group of songs, we kind of realized that there was this sort of wave of kind of emotion and theme that kept going through the songs. So the story kind of started telling itself, where we could kind of put out almost like a start to finish concept of sort of the emotions and the idea behind the concept of this whole album in each EP. You know what I mean? So it's each EP kind of takes you through, the different kind of seasons of life, the ups, the downs, and the in-betweens, kind of over and over and over again, very much like it happens in real life too. So it kind of all started making sense that it'd be kind of fun to do things in a different way and approach it like this. That's been cool too, because, our fans are getting way more music more frequently, which is fun for them and us. And everything kind of unfolds a little bit as it goes.
Yeah, it's kind of the way people, scroll on social media. If you feed somebody just one, if you feed, this one long video and people hit it and they're like, oh, cool, a new video that they put out. And then after a while, even within days, you kind of get burnt out and you move on to the next thing because that's just the way it's set up to kind of work your brain. You don't really get much light on your album. Whereas if you took that album and you break it up into pieces and you just keep feeding it to people, every, few months, weeks, however you want to drop stuff, days, however you want to do it, it feeds the algorithm that people are like kind of naturally wired these days to, kind of react to. So you kind of keep getting that dopamine hit over and over again, as opposed to that one big hit and then it all goes away. You just keep giving it to people over time. And then all those songs that you put so much time into writing, creating, and all the years of work and everything we've done to build up to the point to be able to write those songs the way that we do and do what we do with them. You don't want them to just not be seen because they were all released in one big, kind of just one hit, as opposed to, giving each one the attention they deserve.
I guess technically then you'd have like less deep cuts on an album, wouldn't you? Like the songs all get a bit more attention, a bit more spotlight. Are you kind of seeing that on your side? Like, is it translating to the shows as well when you're performing these new tracks?
Absolutely. I think it's like, there's obviously going to be, the songs that you work to radio or you treat as a single, but even that, in that aspect too, we've been really trying to have kind of video content for a lot of the songs, if not all the songs. Like, I think there will end up being a music video of some sort for almost every song on the record. So, we're definitely seeing, even with streams and just like people's general kind of like awareness of the music, like people are definitely more in tune with more of the record than usual.
I guess that gives you a chance as well. You mentioned like the videos. It gives you a chance to be a bit more creative and show these like different sides of the band and what you want to show, like, visually.
Yeah,
for sure. And that is gone into the direction of just absolute ridiculousness lately. So it's funny because there's kind of these themes. There's been these sort of, different sides of what we've been putting out. There's like the one side where there's been a handful of sort of like lyric videos. They're lyric videos, but they're kind of more than that. They're heavily animated and kind of all fit into like a similar sort of aesthetic. But then the rest of our videos are just us being fucking morons. Like it's like ideas you have in a room at 3 a.m. with your drunk friends, but somehow our management and record label agreed to let us make all the videos. So that's been really fun, is just like seeing if we can out stupid ourselves.
Yeah, I think too for years, if we look at like who we are as people, compared to how we were in the past, as far as aesthetically and even our music a little bit, the way that people would think that we look or act out or whatever, none of it felt like it truly aligned with who we really were. Like we're pretty silly, fun having guys, and it's almost yeah, we're not really like super dark gothy dudes or anything like that, so it doesn't really make sense for us to be super dark and evil and whatever all the time. I mean, it works for certain bands, but for us in particular, we're more like, we like to have fun on stage and we joke around, and when we're off stage, we like to have fun and joke around, and that's pretty much what we're doing all day, every day. So we're like, well, why don't we put that into our videos and like really showcase who we are on like a whole nother platform, making these little short films basically of us just being ridiculous to our music, and it's been a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's as authentic as we can be.
Yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to what you said before, like, the way music is released nowadays and the way it's consumed is different. Like if you look back at, I don't know, your album, The Curse, obviously even the cover is like this vampiric girl, and your videos with like the crimson and all that. You're kind of portraying this whole aesthetic across this one record. Whereas now, because you're breaking up these songs into different bits, you, like you say, you could be a bit more creative and show a bit more personality, I suppose.
For sure. I think back then too, like we're like that was like early internet days, like Mystique still existed. And I think when you're younger too, you're wanting to build this like grandiose vision of who your band is. And I think the reality is like what connects is, like I said, is authenticity. And I think nowadays there's no like veil that bands hide behind. Like everyone knows exactly who everyone else is because of social media. It's like nothing's hidden anymore. So it's like, well, if nothing can be hidden anymore, we might as well just show these people who we fucking really are. You know what I mean? So that they can have then even a deeper connection with the band. It's like, I know if I love a band's music and I realize that it's like that we laugh at all the same dick and fart jokes, like I'm even more in. That's like, oh, like you're just like me,
Yeah. So how did you go about picking which songs would be on which EP, then how did that kind of work? Because I think aren't the songs slightly different on the record as well, the full length?
Yeah, I mean, the order's different, but like I said earlier, each EP needed to go through like the kind of, I call them seasons of life, where it's like each EP goes through absolute zero, lowest of low, bottom of the barrel to through the journey, and then ends at a high point. You know what I mean? It ends with happiness and positivity, and so we were realizing that the songs kind of went through that whole cycle multiple times. So that's kind of how they got grouped together.
Right. And I guess they're linked as well, like with the titles, you've got the spark, the flame, the torch, and then obviously the beautiful dark of life. So I guess they're obviously all, like you've just mentioned, they all interweave into this kind of overarching concept, I suppose. So is that kind of like the human struggle, like life struggle? Is that kind of what's going on here? That's the concept?
Absolutely. It's human condition. And I think the beautiful dark of life is like, in a nutshell, the concept of like the fact that you have to at very least respect the darkest and lowest parts of your life and your mistakes and your lows. You have to at least respect them to be able to get back to the highs, to the light. You know what I mean? So it's about not being afraid of those times, not being afraid of those parts of your life, and not trying to fully avoid them, because you have to go through bad to get to good. You have to go through dark to get to light. I think that's kind of the general concept of the album as a whole, is that like the dark parts and the worst parts are usually what takes you to the highs that you've never seen before. You know what I mean? Dan said this, you said this something about where you're talking about business, but it relates to the same thing where you spend your time climbing a mountain and you get to the top of the mountain and you just realize there's a taller mountain. It's like the search and the journey never ends, but it's like you can be in your darkest point and think that that's the absolute lowest, and it takes you to the best part of life. And then you might realize that last low that you thought couldn't get worse, you might go even lower, but that might take you to an even higher mountain. So it's like that journey is never ending.
Do you think? Because obviously, when you released your last album, Baptized, that was kind of being created in the midst of COVID, and obviously there were so many kind of obvious restrictions and challenges that presented for all of us in different ways. Do you think that kind of the struggles that came through that time for everyone, like you guys not being able to tour properly, did that kind of seep into the album? Not to say that the album's like a COVID concept album, but the kind of indirect influence of that.
A little bit. I mean, we're always everything we write's in the moment, everything is for the most part, like something happens in our life and we absorb that. And then an idea comes and we're like, oh, that made me feel a certain way. Like, I want to write about that in one way or another. So a lot of everything is kind of very what's happening at the time. So because part of it was being done during COVID, there is a little bit of that influence here and there lyrically, just because of the nature of it, but not necessarily where like, an entire album would be all about that or anything. It's we thematically or try to kind of vary a little bit. Everything is very kind of internal though in a lot of cases, things we write. I mean, everything is stuff that we feel in one way or another, and stuff that actually happens to us in one way or another. So it's it feels true and it feels like honest.
We wrote probably like the first quarter of that album, maybe almost half of that album pre-COVID, and then finished it kind of in the middle of the pandemic. And it was funny, like some of those songs, like specifically the song Save Us, during all the stuff that was going on in the pandemic, we was like, that song specifically was like, man, like, can we put this out now? Like this applies to, I think, so many people are feeling right now. Like, and it was just like funny because it's like there was moments on that record that were like foreshadowing, it's right. Like they got written before the world imploded, and then it was like, oh shit, like none of these people would think that we wrote that stuff because of COVID, but a lot of it happened before.
Yeah, because I imagine you would have sat on that album for a while, wouldn't you? Because of the way that the world was. For
sure, definitely longer than usual.
Yeah, and I think is this not the first album where Kyle's kind of had full input? Because I think he came in towards the end of when you were making Baptized. Is that right?
Yeah. I played drums. That was the last record that I played drums on. So Kyle not only played all the drums on all the new stuff, but was a huge, huge input as a writer. it was kind of one of those things where he was always like, at the beginning, it was like, oh, this is your legacy. Like, I don't want to encroach on like you guys' legacy. And it's like, no, like you're in the band now. So now this is your legacy too. Like from here on, like you're a piece of this as well. And we knew his talents as a writer. So it was like when he finally came to the table, I mean, some of the stuff he brought to the table was so insane, like, and so signature to his style of writing. There's a song called Good Enough on the second EP that is like, was almost complete. Like that was like something he came to the table with, and was one of the first songs we've ever had where working with John Feldmann, who produced the record, like we get in the studio every day and it's like, cool, what are we writing about today? And he'll almost 10 times out of 10, he wants to pick a fresh idea that we just came up with out of thin air that day. He's like, it's not like, oh, I have this old song, like that never gets picked. If you have something that's like predetermined, and Kyle brought in that demo almost fully done, like the music was done, and like we had come up with like a chorus melody. And it was one of the first times in our history with John where he was like, let's work on that. And like not only that, but he ended up like using like some of Kyle's production, like on the final thing. So it was like it was cool for him to like kind of be validated. But this was definitely the first time he really interjected himself into the writing, which was huge. Like he made such an impact.
Even vocally too, he's having Kyle in the band. He can sing really well and harmonize and stuff. I mean, it's one thing to be able to sing, but it's also another thing to be able to harmonize. And because of that, I mean, we have moments in our band where live we can have 4 or 5 part harmonies, just to do something that almost no bands at all in our genre even think about touching. Most people, a lot of people use tracks or other things to kind of fill those voids, but your boys are coming in all organic and barbershop style here.
So it sounds like you guys are, there's a few bands out there who are kind of very precious about their part in the band. Like if they're the guitarist, only they can write the guitar parts, and if they're the drummer, they can only write the drum parts themselves. Whereas for you guys, it sounds like you just collaborate on what serves the song. It doesn't matter whose part it is.
Everybody writes everything. We all come into a room, and then everybody like usually writing process is we get in the room that day. Everybody has preconceived things that they're like ready to bring to the table. Usually everyone's got several ideas. So when you have 5 people in the room that have several ideas, plus if we're with John Feldmann or whoever, they have their ideas. There's just there's so many ideas, and everyone just goes around the room and just plays an idea too. And we have tons of them there, and then you pick which one. Everyone kind of votes like which one do we want to start on. We're like, that one's exciting. Let's start on that. And then we just start going, like we'll just lay down a demo of the riff or the vocal, whatever that's there. So we have something to go off of, and whoever's got an idea, just throw them out, because you never know. The quiet dude in the corner could throw out one idea that pivots the whole song and sends it in a direction that we didn't think it would go in. That was amazing and made the song what it was, So if you got, it doesn't matter what instrument you play or what you do. If you have a vocal idea, a lyric idea, a drum idea, a guitar idea, a violin part, whatever it may be, just throw your ideas out there, and collectively, it gets the wheels turning for people. And it works.
It is. And like you said too, it's like really nothing's precious. It's like there's been moments where it's like, oh, like someone I know the guitar part better than Dan, or Travis knows the guitar part better than Dan. It's like, oh, why don't you just play this, like lay this down, or like, even when it comes down to vocals, we've had times where it's like there's a cool vocal part, and me, Porter, and Dan will all go in and try the part, and it's like, oh, like Porter sounds cool as done this. Or like there's a part where on one of the newer songs that Dan and Kyle both, we didn't know which one of them we wanted to sing, and turns out that their voices stacked together was the answer. You know what I mean? So it's like there's no like, I think we all have such a respect for each other as writers too, that we're all kind of in this for the same end game, that it's like, oh, if your song doesn't get picked or chosen that day, or your lyric doesn't win out, for a part, it's like we all know that if everyone else voted it out, you're probably on the right track. You know what I mean? So it's like we always very open to that and very just kind of fluid with that.
It's good you kind of got that democratic process then, as in no one's like, everyone's voice is equal, not have like an ego kind of driving the band or anything like that.
For sure. I don't think there's any room in this band for that anymore. I think, like I said, we have such a mutual respect for each other's individual talents, and like we've been doing this for so long that it's like we we're no better than the shoulder you lean on. You know what I mean? So it's like we're kind of like Atreyu very much is like better than the sum of its parts kind of thing.
So I think this is it album number 3 now you've been working with John Feldmann. So you must obviously really like working with him, and you've got like a good chemistry together. Absolutely. What do you think he kind of brings to the Atreyu table?
I think he's good at one thing that like my biggest lessons from Feldmann has always been like song is king. It's like, it doesn't matter what the style is or what you think it needs to be. Like, is it good? That's the only thing that matters. And I think one thing that John's really been good with us is like, he's really, really good at getting us to like let the guard down. You know, I think that when you've been in a band, like sometimes you can get inside your head about what you think your band is supposed to be. And that can be hindering sometimes, and kind of like to the detriment of what the songs could turn into. And he kind of like was one of the first people that we worked with where it was like, could get us to forget about like what we thought we were supposed to be and just like, right, go in and make good music. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. He talks a lot too about production. I mean, if you listen to our albums before working with John, they're very guitar, bass, drums, vocals. They're very raw and stripped down, which is awesome. There's a vibe around that has, that plays into its own value. But because of the way we think and the way that we like to write, like, we didn't realize how much we were missing out on until we started working with John and learned so much about all the bells and whistles, if you will, that you can add to a song to bring it to life in a whole nother grandiose way. I mean, whether it be string sections or horn sections or just little noises here and there that just create an atmosphere that otherwise wouldn't be there. It wouldn't feel as grand as it does. And it makes songwriting even more exciting, because it's like, for me, that's some of the funnest stuff to add, is that stuff, the pad vocals, the random little ukulele part somewhere, or a mandolin or something that you wouldn't normally have anywhere, just to sprinkle in somewhere, because it just adds push and pull in the song, and it helps with the Fibonacci aspect of building it and stuff. I mean, there's so many things that bring a song to life that we learned from John and have never stopped utilizing, whether we're working with him or not. It's something that we've carried over into just the way that we do things, because it's hard not to do things like that when it just sounds so fucking good.
I guess that opens your eyes and your avenues as well to what else you could do in the future, because you're basically expanding the palette of what Atreyu is the more you do that.
Yeah, sure. Like saxophones.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, looking back a little bit, next year will mark the 20th anniversary of The Curse, which I know at the time was a very important record for you guys. Do you have any plans to celebrate that milestone at all?
I think we might end up doing something. There's nothing crazy on the books yet, but obviously we're very aware of how important that record was to our career and still is. So I'm sure we'll do something fun. I'm sure it deserves celebration.
And looking back even further, I think did the band form in 1998? Is that right?
Technically 99.
Right.
Technically 99. I don't know how it ended up being on Wikipedia or wherever it was. Most places it says 98, and like it's almost like this force that we cannot stop. We're like, it's 99, but like it's 98 everywhere if you look it up. So it's like, well, whatever. It was 1 year, we'll do the 25-year anniversary twice, or the whatever we are.
Why not?
I've lost count. Yeah.
Well, I guess if you tried to go on Wikipedia and changed it to 1999, someone would just go back and change it, wouldn't they, to 1998?
I went on there and I tried to change it, and it was like not letting me for some reason. I bet you anybody else could, but for some reason they were like, nah, Dan, you're not. It's 98, my friend.
Yeah.
All right. Who am I to?
Our bass player's wife on Wikipedia, it says our bass player's name is Porter Mark McKnight, and he went by Mark for years, but his actual name is Porter Marco McKnight. So instead of, his wife went on and was like, you don't need to do the quotes. His name is Porter Mark McKnight. And like, they were like, nope, like they would not change it. It was like, we're not taking the quotes. It's like, well, like, not a fake middle name. Like, you didn't like, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't make it up. But who are we?
I mean, you're in the band, but that's not a reliable source. So
never. I've done that before. like, I've done had things where it's like, oh, like on like certain analytics and like certain backends of music apps, you can like get a source where you have to like show who you are. And it was like, oh, how do you know? Prove to me you're in this band. It's like, okay, here's my Instagram and here's my Twitter and here's my fucking face. Like it's me. I'm standing right here. It's me. So fun.
That's not good enough. No.
Absolutely not.
Well, I guess technically next year is the 24th/25th anniversary of the band. Still a long time.
No, next year will be 25 for sure.
Right.
99 will make it 25.
Right. So how would you, when you look back at 25 years, 2.5 decades of doing this band, how do you feel about what you've achieved during that time as a band? And is there anything on the achievements bucket list that you're really keen to tick off in the future?
So much still. I think that's been the beautiful thing about our band is we never had this like skyrocket rise, to success. We've always just kind of like we were just walking the steps, you know what I mean? It's been one step at a time and one kind of like small victory at a time. I think that's why we're still around. That's what's allowed us to have longevity in our career so far. And I mean, there's so much we haven't done. There's so many places we have yet to play. We haven't been to South America. We've never been to like Russia and a lot of Asian countries. We've not done a lot of things, and it's kind of crazy to be able to still have exciting things to look forward to. You know what I mean? So I think just the fact that we're still here. I mean, we're not a pop band. We're not, your average run of the mill kind of rock band. We're kind of our own brand of whatever it is that we do. So the fact that we're still kicking 25 years later and honestly still growing and like thriving 25 years later is a huge success in itself.
Yeah. I mean, getting to, for years, getting to be able to spend, a lifetime almost just doing what it is that we love. And the fact that it's become a thing where like we can do this for a career, that it is something that we don't have to stop doing is, a lot. There's a lot of bands we've seen come and go over the years. It's hard to sustain and do this. It's not easy. It's very competitive, and you have to constantly be evolving and constantly getting better. And nothing's ever good enough. It's always got to be go to keep up with whatever's going on at the time. But it's what we love doing. So you just get to do what you love and put it out there and hope for the best. But yeah, even that. I mean, just the people you meet over the years. The amount of bands we've toured with over the years is insane. I mean, every band that we've ever grown up listening to at some point in time, we've been on the road with or a festival with, or it's just wild. Like when you being a fan of music like that, and all of a sudden you're being on the same playing field with these people that you admire and grew up as like as being big fans, are now calling you over to have barbecues at their house or something, and you're just like, this is insane. Yeah. Like, how is this guy calling me a friend? Does he know how much of a fan I am of this band? Like, I almost feel like an imposter or something, But it's a really cool thing. It's a really special thing.
Funny, you say that. Even literally, like last week, I did the One Life One Chance. Toby Morse from H2O's podcast, and I've been a fan of H2O since I was young, and it was funny. We're like, it's crazy that we've never met before, like whatever. And he's like, have we ever officially met? And I was like, well, I've screamed in your face and finger pointed at you a handful of times, but we've never actually met in person, like for sure met. You know what I mean? It's like crazy that now I get to you invite me to do your podcast. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, at his house.
At his house. It's in his kitchen.
That's crazy. Like,
yeah, it's wild.
Still 25 years later, you're still, having these kind of, I don't know, pinch me moments, meeting your heroes and stuff like that. That's crazy.
They happen all the time. We're grateful for them all.
Yeah, I had sushi the other day with Joey Allen, the guitar player of Warrant, who is like she's my cherry pie, all that stuff. I grew up loving that stuff, and like I had it's a long story, but I ended up becoming friendly and meeting Joey Allen because he randomly lived in my neighborhood, and I had no idea. It was like the weirdest, like, what, you live like across the street from me? Like, what the hell? It was so strange. But I've been friends with him ever since. We still hang out and go get food every once in a while and play golf and stuff. It's super random. Or I'll give one more because I only happened because it recently, is a guy named Ryan Green, who is a producer that did all of our favorite records back in the 90s, like No Effects, and Strung Out, Good Riddance, like all that kind of Face to Face, all the Fat Records bands, people like that just, hit you up like, hey, let's get dinner. And you're just like, what? You want to hang out with me? Like, yeah, my God, I just feel like you're like, oh man, I just want to interview him about, how was it writing when they wrote the song Linoleum? What was that like? And then what happened, it's super strange, but it's exciting. It keeps it exciting for us too, because we're, at the end of the day, we're all fans,
Yeah. I guess you're sat there kind of like not wanting to fanboy too much and like have this like interview with him. You just kind of like a general conversation, but it's then like, I have all these questions in my head that I want you to answer right now.
Yeah. It's wild, especially when you're sitting on their couch at their house or something, it's like, it's strange. Like you can't be weird. You know what I mean? You just got to hang. But I mean, at the end of the day, like we're all once you have something like that, where like at the end of the day, like we have so many similarities, like we've done so many things in that world where it's like it doesn't feel weird, you realize like, oh, these are people just like me. We're sitting there making dick and fart jokes and stuff. And you're like, it's so strange. Like we're the same dude. Like this is fun, like it's I think that's makes the world feel smaller and less intimidating. And it makes you feel even more confident knowing that just people are people.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well for you guys, because you kind of started this band so young, most people will get like a 9 to 5 and they'll grow up through education and through like an office job and all that kind of stuff. Whereas you guys grew up on the road all the time, going to all these different countries, meeting all these different people, playing in all these venues and all that kind of stuff. So that must be crazy as well, just to kind of look back and think of it in that way.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Like some people went to college, but that was our college.
We went on tour. I always say that like my kids will come out on tour and, sometimes like, they might miss a few days of school here and there because they come out and visit me. And it's like, they're going to learn more on that fucking tour bus than they're going to learn in that classroom. You know what I mean? Like they're going to get more culture and more knowledge from the people they're surrounded with than they would in the classroom.
Yeah. Getting out of the bubble, I mean, it's changed everything about us in so many ways as people, as everything. It makes you, ideally in most cases, it makes you a better person going around to all these different countries and just seeing how different people live and culturally how people are different and how similar everybody is also at the same time. So it's the different spices of life that make it really exciting going to each country and meeting different people and hearing the different languages, even trying to, terribly speak their languages, but it's fun, and it's out of respect, and I think too, when you come back, to where you're from after traveling all over the world and seeing all these different people and how awesome everybody can be. And then when you see things in the news that are terrible, you're just like, or you even see people having, skewed perceptions of people from other countries and stuff where you're just like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like you live in a bubble, so it's being able to leave the bubble and experience that it's one of the most priceless things that you can do as a human.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're going on the road and going to these countries that, to do technically your job, these shows. Some of these countries, some people might never get the opportunity to go to in their lifetime for X, Y, Z reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people don't ever leave their state or even their hometown. They mind blowing. I had a stepdad that never traveled out of the country or gone either farther than just Nevada and California. Just never went anywhere, and it's like his whole life, just never went anywhere. And it's like, it's so strange to me. It's like the world is such a big place and there's so many interesting things you can do and see that would inspire you and can completely change the path of your life in such a cool way that you didn't even realize, that you needed, but maybe you get the core wanted or something. And it's a beautiful thing. It's wild that people don't.
Yeah. Well, looking at the future of Atreyu, you've got your new album number 9. That's coming out on December the 8th. And then you've got a tour across the UK and mainland Europe, and that goes in November and December as well. So that's kind of boxing off your 2023. What's planned so far for 2024 for Atreyu?
Much of the same. We'll be we're kind of already working on things. There's a handful of things really like that are popping up around the world. We'll be doing some festival stuff in Europe. I know Rock and Ring, Rock and Park just announced. So we'll be doing some stuff in the summer. Much more in the States, maybe Australia, back to Europe again, maybe. So we're really going to be cruising around quite a bit.
All systems go for Atreyu then, I guess.
Yeah, no slowing down.
Well, that's great. Thanks very much, guys. I appreciate you chatting to me and kind of looking back on, my kind of connection with Atreyu at the start of this conversation and, your past 25 years as well. Best of luck with the new album launch and, the tours that are coming up. Before I do let you go and enjoy the rest of your day, any final words that you want to say? The floor's yours.
Thanks for having us. When this does come out, if there is any more shows happening on the Euro UK tour, come on out.
Yeah, appreciate everyone coming and hanging, and it's going to be a good time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Later.
Take care of you. Bye.
And that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast, then please leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. If you want to support the podcast further, you can go and give it a follow on social media, pick up something from the merch store, or subscribe to the Patreon to get early access to episodes. All the links can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again, hopefully catch you on the next one, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.